The crack of the bullwhip echoed through the dusty streets of Pioche, Nevada, causing Katherine O'Brien to flinch despite herself. After 3 days of travel by stagecoach, she'd finally arrived in the mining town her father had called home for the past 2 years, only to discover he had passed away just 1 week prior. Now, standing amid the bustle of the main street, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small carpet bag clutched in her trembling hands, the full weight of her situation pressed down upon her like the unforgiving Nevada sun. It was 1876, and at 22 years old, Katherine found herself utterly alone. The telegram from her stepmother had been cruelly brief. Her father had succumbed to consumption, and there was no place for her in Boston anymore. What the telegram hadn't mentioned was that Hester O'Brien had burned all of Katherine's belongings before sending her west, with barely enough money for the journey. "Miss, you're blocking the way," a gruff voice called out. Katherine stumbled aside as a wagon loaded with ore rumbled past, kicking up dust that settled on her already travel-worn dress. Her father had written about his success in this booming mining town, about the small but respectable house he'd purchased. Katherine had memorized the address 218 Cedar Street and now began walking with purpose, ignoring the curious stares from townspeople unaccustomed to seeing a well-dressed Eastern woman alone on their streets. Cedar Street proved to be on the outskirts of town, lined with modest homes. Number 218 was a small clapboard structure with peeling white paint and a sagging front porch. Katherine's heart lifted at the sight, humble though it was. This would be her sanctuary. She knocked tentatively, then more firmly when no answer came. Finally, the door creaked open to reveal a stout woman with steel-gray hair and suspicious eyes. "Yes?" the woman demanded. "I'm Katherine O'Brien, James O'Brien's daughter. This is my father's house." The woman's expression shifted from suspicion to pity. "Oh, honey. You don't know, do you?" "Know what?" "I received word of my father's passing, yes. Your father sold this house to me and my husband 3 months ago. Said he was moving to a mining claim outside of town." Katherine felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. That can't be right. "He never mentioned. He left no forwarding address, Miss O'Brien. I'm sorry." The door closed gently but firmly, leaving Katherine on the porch, her world crumbling around her. She sat heavily on the top step, her mind racing. Her father had sold his home without telling her. Had his illness affected his mind? Or had he simply abandoned her, as her stepmother had suggested in her crueler moments? As the sun began to set, painting the Nevada sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Katherine faced an uncomfortable truth. She had nowhere to go, almost no money, and not a single friend in Pioche. She wandered back toward the center of town, passing the Silver Palace Saloon, where raucous laughter and piano music spilled into the street. A group of miners eyed her with interest as she hurried past. "Madam, you look a mite lost." The deep voice startled her, and Katherine whirled to find herself face to face with a tall man leading a chestnut horse. His clothes marked him as a rancher rather than a miner, worn denim pants, sturdy boots, and a faded blue shirt beneath a leather vest. His face was partly shadowed by his wide-brimmed hat, but she could see he was young, perhaps in his late 20s. "I'm quite all right, thank you," Katherine replied stiffly, her Boston upbringing asserting itself despite her circumstances. "Pardon my saying so, but you don't look all right." He stepped closer, and she could now see his face clearly sun-bronzed skin, a strong jaw darkened with stubble, and remarkably kind hazel eyes. "I'm Adam Thornton. I've got a small spread about 5 miles outside town." "Katherine O'Brien." She hesitated, then added, "I've just arrived from Boston to discover my father has passed away." "James O'Brien?" When she nodded, Adam's expression softened. "I'm sorry, Miss O'Brien. Your father was a good man. We played cards together sometimes when he came to town." "Did you know he'd sold his house?" Katherine couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "I'd heard something about that. He was spending most of his time at his claim." Adam studied her face. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" Katherine lifted her chin. "I'll find accommodations. The boarding houses are likely full. There's been a new silver strike. And the hotel." He trailed off, glancing at the expensive establishment down the street. Katherine followed his gaze and swallowed hard. The hotel would consume what little money she had left in a matter of days. I don't require charity, Mr. Thornton. It's not charity to help a neighbor, Miss O'Brien, and your father was a neighbor of sorts. Adam hesitated, then said, I've got a cabin on my property. It's small, but it's clean and warm. You're welcome to stay there while you sort things out. And where would you stay, Mr. Thornton? I've got a perfectly good barn. When she began to protest, he added, It wouldn't be the first time I've slept there, and it surely won't be the last. Catherine's pride warred with her desperate situation. Night was falling rapidly, and the characters now emerging onto the streets of Pioche made her increasingly uneasy. Just until I can make other arrangements, she said finally. Relief washed over Adam's face. That's settled then. Can you ride? Yes, though it's been some time. Adam helped her mount his horse, then led the animal by the reins through town and onto the dusty trail heading southeast. They walked in silence for a time, Katherine perched uncomfortably on the saddle, acutely aware of this stranger's kindness and her own vulnerability. Have you come to claim your father's estate? Adam asked eventually. Katherine let out a humorless laugh. I rather doubt there is one. My stepmother implied he died a pauper. Hester? That woman never set foot in Nevada, so far as I know. No, she remained in Boston. Then she wouldn't know about the claim. Your father struck a decent vein about 6 months back. Nothing spectacular, but steady. He talked about sending for you once he'd saved enough. Katherine absorbed this information in stunned silence. Her father had been planning to send for her? Then why had he sold the house? And if he'd had a profitable claim, where was the money now? I need to find his claim, she said firmly. We can look into that tomorrow. For tonight, you need rest. As they crested a small rise, Adam's ranch came into view, in the fading light a modest spread with a barn, corral, and small cabin nestled against a backdrop of rugged hills. A stream meandered along one edge of the property, lined with cottonwood trees that rustled in the evening breeze. It's not much, Adam said, a note of pride in his voice nonetheless. I'm raising cattle, though I started with just horses, hoping to expand once I get a good herd going. It's lovely, Katherine said honestly, drawn to the peaceful setting after the chaos of the day. Adam helped her dismount when they reached the cabin, his hand strong and steady on her waist. The brief contact sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach, which she promptly dismissed as hunger and exhaustion. The cabin was indeed small, just one room with a stone fireplace, a narrow bed against one wall, a table with 2 chairs, and a few simple furnishings. But it was clean and well-maintained, with a colorful quilt on the bed and curtains at the single window. I'll get a fire going, Adam said, already stacking kindling in the fireplace. There's a pump out back for water, and an outhouse just past it. I'll bring you some food from the main house. Main house? Katherine looked around in confusion. Adam smiled. This is the old cabin. I built a new one about 100 yards that way. He gestured vaguely north. It's a bit bigger, but not by much. This one stays warm better in winter, though. Mr. Thornton, I can't possibly take your cabin. Adam, please. And you're not taking it? I'm lending it to you. He struck a match, and the kindling caught with a cheerful crackle. I'll be back with some food. Before she could protest further, he was gone, leaving Katherine to sink onto one of the wooden chairs, overwhelmed by the events of the day. She allowed herself a moment of weakness, a few silent tears escaping before she straightened her back and wiped them away. By the time Adam returned with a tray bearing a steaming bowl of stew, freshly baked bread, and a cup of coffee, Katherine had composed herself. She ate gratefully while Adam explained the basics of the cabin and promised to help her investigate her father's affairs the next day. Thank you, she said, as he prepared to leave. I don't know what I would have done if— No need to thank me, Adam interrupted gently. Your father spoke of you often. He was proud of his educated Eastern daughter. A shadow crossed his face. I'm sorry about your stepmother. James mentioned things weren't easy for you after he left. Katherine's throat tightened. Hester never wanted me there. When father left for Nevada, she made that abundantly clear. After his death, Katherine hesitated, embarrassed. What did she do? Adam's voice was soft, but his eyes had hardened. She burned my belongings, everything except what I could fit in this bag. Katherine gestured to her small carpet bag. She said father had left nothing, that I was a burden she never agreed to bear. Adam's jaw clenched. That's not the story James told. He sent money home regular-like, said he was building a future for you both. A fresh wave of grief washed over Katherine. I received only 2 letters in 2 years. Hester must have intercepted the rest, along with any money he sent. We'll sort it out, Adam promised. Get some rest now. You're safe here. With that, he bid her good night and left for the barn, his tall figure disappearing into the darkness. Katherine bolted the door behind him, not out of fear of Adam, but from habit formed in her stepmother's hostile household. She changed into her nightgown, one of only 2 she'd been able to save, and slipped beneath the quilt on the narrow bed. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her as questions tumbled through her mind. What had happened to her father's mining claim? Where was the money he'd apparently been sending home? And what would she do now, alone in this rugged territory with nothing to her name? Eventually, the gentle sounds of the Nevada night crickets chirping, the distant howl of a coyote, the soft rustling of leaves lulled her into a fitful sleep. Katherine woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin window and the unfamiliar sounds of livestock. For a moment, she was disoriented. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back. She dressed quickly in her second-best dress, now her best, since the one she'd traveled in was dusty and wrinkled, and ventured outside. The morning was cool, but promised heat later, the sky a perfect cloudless blue. Adam was already at work, leading a horse from the corral to where a saddle rested on the fence. He looked up at the sound of the cabin door and raised a hand in greeting. "Good morning," he called. "There's coffee on the stove in the main cabin. Help yourself." Katherine made her way to the larger cabin, which proved to be a simple 2-room structure with a combined kitchen and living area, and what she presumed was a bedroom behind a closed door. The kitchen was surprisingly tidy for a bachelor's home, with copper pots hanging from hooks and a loaf of fresh bread on the table. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stepped back outside, watching as Adam continued his morning chores. There was a fluid grace to his movements, an ease born of years of physical work. She found herself admiring the way the morning sun highlighted the auburn tones in his brown hair when he removed his hat to wipe his brow. "I need to go into town today," she announced when he approached. "I must speak with the sheriff about my father's claim." Adam nodded, sipping from his own coffee cup. "I figured as much. I'll ride in with you. I need supplies anyway. I don't wish to impose further. It's not an imposition. I was planning to go in today regardless." He studied her face. "Did you sleep all right?" "Yes, thank you." It wasn't entirely true, but the cabin had been far more comfortable than she'd expected. "Good. We'll leave after breakfast. There's eggs and bacon if you're hungry." Katherine insisted on cooking, grateful to have something useful to do. As they ate at the small table in Adam's cabin, she found herself curious about this man, who had so readily offered help to a stranger. "How long have you been in Pioche, Mr. Thornton, Adam?" "About 4 years now. I came from Colorado originally, worked at the mines there, saved enough to buy this land. The previous owner had let it go to ruin during the war." "The Civil War?" Katherine asked, surprised. Adam nodded. "He went to fight for the Union, never came back. His widow tried to keep it going, but eventually gave up and moved back east. I got it for a fair price." He hesitated, then added, "I was too young for that war, but my father and older brother fought. Only my father returned." Katherine sensed the pain behind the simple statement. "I'm sorry." Adam shrugged. "It was a long time ago. What about you? Your father mentioned you attended school in Boston." "Yes. Pembroke Academy for Young Ladies." Katherine couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "Hester insisted I needed polishing, though she withdrew me once father left for Nevada. Said the expense was unnecessary for someone in my position." "Your position?" "A burden, an unwanted stepdaughter." Katherine looked down at her plate. "My mother died when I was 12. Father remarried 2 years later. Hester was disappointed when she realized father wasn't as wealthy as she'd believed. When he decided to seek his fortune in Nevada, she was furious. She blamed me, said the expense of raising another woman's child had driven him away." "That's nonsense," Adam said firmly. "James spoke of the mines here long before he left Boston. He saw an opportunity and took it, that's all." They finished breakfast in companionable silence. then prepared for the journey to town. Katherine changed back into her travel dress, which Adam had kindly brushed clean for her, and they set off with Katherine riding behind Adam on his horse. The proximity was unsettling. Katherine had never been this close to a man who wasn't her father, and the feel of Adam's solid back against her chest, the necessity of wrapping her arms around his waist, sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the rising temperature. In town, their first stop was the sheriff's office, a small building on the main street with the county jail attached to one side. Sheriff Monroe was a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Miss O'Brien," he said after introductions were made, "I was sorry to hear about your father. Good man, James was." "Thank you, Sheriff. I'm trying to locate information about his mining claim. I understand he had some success recently." The sheriff nodded slowly. "That he did. Not a fortune, but steady returns. The claim is about 3 miles northwest of town in Stampede Gulch." "And its status now?" Adam asked. Sheriff Monroe's expression turned grim. "That's where things get complicated. According to the records, James sold the claim 2 weeks before he died." "Sold it? To whom?" Katherine demanded. "Fellow named Jeremiah Caldwell. He's got several other claims in the area." The sheriff shuffled through some papers on his desk. Sale price was recorded as $800. "That's well below value for a producing claim," Adam said sharply. "Ain't disputing that," the sheriff replied, "but the paperwork's all in order, signed and witnessed." "Where's the money then?" Katherine asked. "If my father sold his claim for $800 just before he died, where did those funds go?" The sheriff spread his hands. "That I can't tell you, Miss O'Brien. Your father kept a room at the boarding house in his final months. Mrs. Henderson might know more about his personal effects." Their next stop was the boarding house, a 2-story building with a wide porch where several older men sat smoking pipes. Inside, Mrs. Henderson proved to be a kindly woman in her 60s who clucked sympathetically at Katherine's story. "Your poor father suffered greatly at the end," she said, leading them to a small room on the 2nd floor. "The consumption took him quick, but it wasn't merciful in its speed." The room was sparse but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and a battered trunk at the foot of the bed. "His personal things are still here," Mrs. Henderson explained. "I wasn't sure what to do with them, with no family present at his passing." Katherine's throat tightened as she knelt beside the trunk. Inside were her father's clothes, a few books, a tarnished pocket watch, and a small leather-bound journal. Of $800, there was no sign. "Did my father speak of selling his claim?" Adam asked Mrs. Henderson while Katherine examined the journal. "Oh, yes, though he wasn't happy about it. Said that Caldwell fellow pressured him something fierce, showing up day after day making offers. Your father was worried about providing for you, Miss O'Brien. When the consumption got bad, I think he feared he wouldn't last, and wanted to secure your future." Katherine's fingers froze on the journal pages. "He said that? That he was selling the claim for me?" "Indeed he did. Said the money was for his daughter's security, so she wouldn't be dependent on that stepmother of his." Mrs. Henderson's face clouded. "Strange thing was, the day after he signed those papers, he seemed mighty upset. Kept saying something wasn't right, that he needed to speak with Caldwell again." Katherine and Adam exchanged glances. "Mrs. Henderson, did my father have a bank account here in Pioche?" Katherine asked. "At the Miners Exchange Bank, yes, though I couldn't say what became of it after his passing." The bank was their next destination. The manager, a pinch-faced man named Simmons, was initially reluctant to discuss James O'Brien's accounts with his daughter. But Adam's steady presence and Katherine's determined persistence eventually wore him down. "Mr. O'Brien closed his account 3 days before his death," Simmons finally admitted, consulting a ledger. "Withdrew the entire balance of $812 in cash." "And the money from his claim sale?" Adam pressed. Simmons flipped back a few pages. $800 was deposited the day before the withdrawal. It appears Mr. O'Brien simply withdrew the funds and closed the account. Outside the bank, Katherine clutched her father's journal to her chest, her mind racing. He withdrew the money, but didn't leave it in his room. Where would he have put it? "Did he mention anything in his journal?" Adam asked gently. "I've only skimmed it so far. Most entries are about the mine, daily yields, that sort of thing." She flipped to the final pages. The last entry was 4 days before he died. She read aloud. Caldwell's offer is insultingly low, but I fear I haven't the strength to work the claim much longer, and Katherine must be provided for. If I die with the claim unsold, that devil Hester will find a way to seize it, leaving my daughter with nothing. Better a small sum secured than a larger one at risk. I'll deposit the funds tomorrow, then send word to Katherine to join me. We'll start fresh, away from Hester's poison. Katherine's voice broke on the last words. Her father had intended to send for her after all. He had sold his claim specifically to provide for her. But where was the money now? We need to speak with Caldwell, Adam said decisively. And I think we should take another look at that claim. They found Jeremiah Caldwell at the Silver Palace Saloon, a portly man with a florid complexion and expensive clothes that stood out among the miners and cowboys. He did not seem pleased to see them. Miss O'Brien, he acknowledged with a nod that didn't quite qualify as respectful. My condolences on your father's passing. Mr. Caldwell, I understand you purchased my father's claim shortly before his death, Katherine said, struggling to keep her voice even. A fair transaction between willing parties, Caldwell replied, swirling whiskey in his glass. All perfectly legal and above board. $800 seems rather low for a producing claim, Adam commented. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. The claim was nearly played out. I paid more than fair market value, as a kindness to a dying man. That's not what my father's journal suggests, Katherine countered, and it's certainly not what the other miners say. Your father was ill, Miss O'Brien. Perhaps his assessment of the claim's value was optimistic. Caldwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business to attend to. As he stood to leave, Katherine played her final card. Did my father approach you after the sale, Mr. Caldwell? Did he express concerns about the transaction? Caldwell froze momentarily, then forced a laugh. Certainly not. Once a deal is done, it's done. Good day to you both. After Caldwell left, Adam and Katherine shared a look of suspicion. He's lying, Adam said softly. Yes, but proving it is another matter. Katherine tapped her father's journal thoughtfully. I want to see this claim for myself. They rode out to Stampede Gulch that afternoon, Adam having borrowed a second horse from a friend in town. The claim was marked by a small wooden structure that served as both office and shelter, with the mine entrance visible as a dark opening in the hillside, shored up with timber supports. A lone worker was loading ore into a cart when they arrived. He straightened as they approached, revealing himself to be a young man no older than 20. This is private property, he called out warily. We're aware, Adam replied. I'm Adam Thornton, and this is Katherine O'Brien, James O'Brien's daughter. The young man's expression changed immediately. Miss O'Brien? Your pa talked about you all the time. I'm Tommy Wilson. I worked this claim with your father before he sold to Caldwell. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Wilson, Katherine said warmly. I'm trying to piece together my father's final days. I understand he sold this claim to Mr. Caldwell, but I'm curious about the circumstances. Tommy glanced nervously at the mine entrance. I shouldn't be talking about this. Mr. Caldwell wouldn't like it. Please, Katherine pressed. My father intended that money for my future, but it's missing. Any information you have could help. Tommy hesitated, then sighed. Your pa didn't want to sell, not really. But he was getting weaker by the day, and Caldwell kept coming around, making offers. When your pa finally agreed, Caldwell brought the papers here to the claim, along with the money in cash. And my father signed the papers here? Adam asked. Tommy nodded. Right at that table there. He pointed to a rough wooden table just inside the shelter. Caldwell brought a fellow to witness, someone I didn't recognize. Your pa took the money, counted it careful-like, then put it in a leather pouch and tucked it inside his shirt. Katherine leaned forward intently. And then? Then they left, Caldwell and his witness. But your pa, he was troubled, said something didn't feel right about the papers. Next morning he came back, asked to see the claim documents Caldwell had left here. What did he find? Adam asked. Tommy looked uncomfortable. I don't rightly know. He was studying those papers for a long while, then suddenly cursed and said he'd been cheated, said he was going to confront Caldwell. That was the last time I saw him alive. Katherine and Adam exchanged alarmed glances. Tommy, Adam said carefully, do you think Caldwell might have had something to do with James's death? The young miner looked frightened now. I didn't say that. Consumption took him. Everyone knows that. But the timing is suspicious, Katherine pressed. My father realizes he's been cheated, confronts Caldwell, and dies days later. The doc said it was consumption, Tommy insisted, though he looked uncertain. But I will say this, the claim wasn't played out, not by a long shot. We hit a rich new vein just a week before the sale. Your pa was ecstatic, said it would set you both up proper. Katherine's heart sank. If what Tommy said was true, Caldwell had not only cheated her father on the sale price, but may have had something to do with his death and the missing money. As they rode back to town, Katherine's mind was a whirl of suspicions and grief. Adam, I think Caldwell somehow cheated my father, and when father realized it and confronted him, it's possible, Adam admitted grimly, but proving it would be nearly impossible without witnesses or evidence. The money is evidence, Katherine insisted. $800 doesn't just vanish. If Caldwell took it back after my father died. But how would he know where to find it? Your father withdrew it from the bank, and it wasn't in his room at the boarding house. Katherine frowned in concentration. Father was careful with money. He wouldn't have carried that much around. He must have hidden it somewhere he considered safe. The question is where? Back in Pioche, they visited Dr. Harrison, who had attended James O'Brien in his final days. The doctor confirmed the cause of death as consumption, but mentioned something interesting. Your father was lucid until near the end, Dr. Harrison told Katherine. He spoke often of you and of ensuring your future. The day before he passed, he asked me for paper and pen, said he needed to leave instructions. Did he write something? Katherine asked eagerly. The doctor nodded. A letter, I believe. He sealed it and asked me to post it, but he died before giving me the address. I left it with his personal effects at the boarding house. Returning to the boarding house, Katherine searched her father's trunk more thoroughly, but found no sealed letter. Mrs. Henderson hadn't seen one either. Someone must have taken it, Katherine concluded as they sat on the boarding house porch that evening. Perhaps it contained information about the money's location. Or perhaps your father hid it somewhere else, Adam suggested, somewhere he considered significant. Katherine stared thoughtfully at her father's journal, flipping through the pages for any clue. Her eye caught on an entry from several months earlier. Visited the old Fremont church today. Peaceful place, though abandoned since '68. Left flowers at Sarah's memorial stone. 7 years gone, and I miss her still. Katherine has her smile. Sarah was my mother, Katherine explained softly. But I didn't know father had placed a memorial for her here. The Fremont church is about a mile outside town, Adam said. It was built during the first silver rush, but abandoned when the mines in that area played out. People still use the cemetery occasionally. They rode to the church the next morning. It stood on a small hill, a simple wooden structure with a bell tower, its white paint long since weathered away. The cemetery behind it was overgrown, but still recognizable as hallowed ground, with stone markers rising among the sagebrush. They found Sarah O'Brien's memorial stone, easily enough a simple marker with her name, dates, and the inscription, "Beloved wife and mother, forever in our hearts." Katherine knelt beside it, tears welling in her eyes for the mother she still missed dearly. He remembered her, even here, she whispered. Adam stood respectfully silent, giving her a moment with her grief. As Katherine traced the letters of her mother's name, she noticed something odd about the ground in front of the stone. It seemed more recently disturbed than the surrounding area. Adam, she said suddenly, do you think... He was already kneeling beside her, examining the earth. It's been dug up recently. See how the grass hasn't regrown evenly? Katherine's heart raced. Could my father have buried the money here? Adam produced a small folding knife from his pocket and began carefully digging in the loosened soil. About 8 inches down, the blade clinked against something metal. A few more minutes of careful excavation revealed a small tin box, the kind often used to store tobacco. With trembling hands, Katherine lifted it from the earth and opened the lid. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed simply to Katherine, and beneath it, neatly stacked banknotes. Katherine broke the seal on the envelope and unfolded the letter inside, written in her father's familiar hand. My dearest Katherine, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have followed the clues I left to find your inheritance. I sold my claim to Caldwell under duress, accepting a price far below its true value when he threatened to use his influence to have it seized through legal trickery. After the sale, I discovered the papers had been altered to indicate the claim was nearly depleted, when in truth, we had just discovered a rich new vein. When I confronted Caldwell, he threatened your safety if I exposed him. He has many friends in high places, including Judge Wilson, who would surely rule in his favor in any legal dispute. Therefore, I have chosen to secure your future in this fashion instead. The $800 from the sale is yours. Use it to build a new life, whether here in Nevada or back east. Know that I loved you always, and my greatest regret is that we will not build that life together as I had planned. With all my love, your father. Katherine read the letter aloud to Adam, her voice breaking several times. When she finished, they sat in stunned silence beside Sarah O'Brien's memorial stone. Caldwell didn't kill your father directly, Adam said finally, but he hastened his end through threats and deception. The stress likely worsened his condition. And now I have proof of his dishonesty. But as father said, what good would it do? Judge Wilson is known to be in Caldwell's pocket. Katherine carefully counted the money, exactly $800, her father's last gift to her. What will you do now? Adam asked quietly. Katherine looked around at the wild Nevada landscape, so different from the ordered streets of Boston. I don't know. I have the means to return east, but what awaits me there? Hester made it clear I'm not welcome. You could stay, Adam suggested, then quickly added, in Pioche, I mean. There are opportunities here. Katherine considered this as they rode back to town. By the time they reached Adam's ranch that evening, she had made her decision. I'd like to stay in Nevada, she told Adam over supper, at least for now. Perhaps I could find work in town while I decide what to do with father's money. Adam nodded, though she thought she detected a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Mrs. Peterson at the general store mentioned needing help, and there's the school they're always looking for educated women to teach. I could teach, Katherine mused. I enjoyed my studies at Pembroke. You could stay here, Adam said suddenly. At the cabin, I mean, while you get established. No need to spend your father's money on lodging. I've imposed on your kindness far too long already, Katherine protested. It's no imposition. I barely use that cabin anyway. He hesitated, then added, Truth is, it's nice having someone else around. Ranching can be solitary work. Katherine studied his face, noting the sincerity in his expression. In just a few days, Adam Thornton had become someone she trusted implicitly. A rare thing in her experience with men outside her father. All right, she agreed, but I insist on paying rent once I find employment. Adam looked as if he might argue, but nodded instead. Fair enough. The following weeks established a new rhythm to Katherine's life. She secured a position at the Pioche schoolhouse teaching the younger children, discovered she had a genuine talent for it, and continued to live in Adam's cabin. True to her word, she paid him a small sum each month, though he protested it was unnecessary. They fell into comfortable habits breakfast together before Adam began his ranch work and Katherine left for the school. Occasional shared suppers, Sunday rides to explore the surrounding countryside. Katherine found herself looking forward to these times together, enjoying Adam's quiet company and dry humor. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch of the main cabin, watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and purple, Adam suddenly asked, Have you thought about what you'll do with your father's money? Katherine nodded. I've been considering it carefully. I've saved most of my teaching salary, so the $800 remains untouched. She hesitated, then added, I'm thinking of buying land. Adam looked surprised. Land? Here in Nevada? Yes. There's a small parcel adjacent to the northeast corner of your property. Mr. Jenkins at the land office says it's available. It has good water access and enough flat ground for a small house and garden. Adam was silent for a long moment, and Katherine worried she'd somehow offended him. Finally, he said, You're planning to stay then? Permanently. I am, Katherine confirmed. I've come to love it here. The openness, the sense of possibility. In Boston, I was always James O'Brien's daughter, or Hester's unwanted burden. Here, I'm just Katherine. You've never been just Katherine, Adam said quietly. his eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. Not to me. Catherine's heart fluttered at his words and the intensity of his gaze. Adam, He stood abruptly. I should check on the new calf. Excuse me. As he strode toward the barn, Katherine remained on the porch, confused by the sudden tension between them. She had grown increasingly aware of her feelings for Adam over the past weeks, the way her pulse quickened when their hands accidentally touched, how she found herself watching him as he worked, admiring the strength and grace of his movements. But she had assumed he saw her merely as a friend, perhaps even a responsibility he'd taken on for her father's sake. The next day, Katherine visited the land office and purchased the parcel she'd described to Adam. When she returned to the ranch that evening and shared the news, his reaction was oddly muted. "That's good," he said, focusing intently on the leather bridle he was repairing. "Jenkins is honest. He wouldn't sell you poor land." "I thought you'd be more excited," Katherine said, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. "We'll be neighbors." Adam looked up then, his expression unreadable. "Of course I'm pleased. It's just—" He trailed off, then seemed to come to some decision. "Katherine, there's something I need to tell you." Her stomach tightened with sudden anxiety. "What is it?" "I received a letter yesterday from my cousin in Colorado. He's offered me a partnership in his cattle operation there. It's a significant opportunity, larger herds, better grazing land, access to the railroad for shipping." "You're leaving?" Katherine felt as if the ground had dropped away beneath her feet. "I'm considering it," Adam corrected. "The ranch here does well enough, but I've always planned to expand. This would allow me to do that years sooner than I could on my own." "I see." Katherine struggled to keep her voice steady. "When would you go?" "Not until spring at the earliest. There's much to arrange." Adam hesitated, then added softly, "I hadn't made a decision yet. I wanted to discuss it with you first." "With me? Why? It's your life." "Your decision." Adam set aside the bridle and crossed to where she stood. "Because in these past months, you've become important to me, Katherine. More important than I expected. More important than perhaps I had a right to let you become." Katherine's heart pounded as he took her hands in his. "I don't understand." "When you first arrived, I offered help because it was the right thing to do. Because your father was a good man who would have done the same for my kin." His thumbs traced gentle circles on her palms. "But as the weeks passed, my feelings changed, grew. I found myself looking forward to our breakfasts, our conversations. I found myself thinking of you when we were apart." "Adam," Katherine whispered, her voice catching. "I have no right to ask you to change your plans," he continued. "You've built a life here, bought land, but before I make any decisions about Colorado, I needed you to know that my feelings for you are substantial." "Substantial," Katherine repeated, a small smile forming despite the turmoil in her heart. Adam's lips quirked in response. "I'm not a man of fancy words, Katherine, but yes, substantial, deep, real." Katherine took a deep breath. "I bought that land because I wanted to stay close to you," she admitted. "I've grown to care for you, Adam, more than I thought possible in such a short time." The hope that blazed in his eyes made her breath catch. "Then perhaps we should discuss the future, together." "Perhaps we should," she agreed. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered in the touch of lips. The second was more certain, a promise exchanged without words. When they finally parted, both were smiling. "I don't want to go to Colorado," Adam said simply. "Not without you. And I'm thinking now that I don't need to go at all. There's plenty of opportunity right here if we work together." "Together," Katherine echoed, liking the sound of it. "My land and yours, side by side." "Or combined," Adam suggested carefully. "If you were amenable to a more permanent arrangement between us." Katherine felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Are you proposing, Mr. Thornton?" "Not yet," he replied with a smile. "But consider yourself forewarned that I intend to, once we've had time to be certain of our feelings." That certainty came sooner rather than later. As autumn painted the Nevada landscape in russet and gold, Katherine and Adam's relationship deepened. They spoke of their hopes and fears, shared stories of their pasts, and built dreams for their future. Katherine continued teaching, using her evenings to plan the small house she would build on her land come spring. Then winter arrived with unexpected ferocity. An early December blizzard swept down from the mountains, bringing howling winds and snow that piled in drifts higher than a man's head. Katherine had been in town when the storm hit, and Adam had ridden through the beginning of the blizzard to bring her safely back to the ranch. They reached the cabin just as the worst of the storm descended, the world outside becoming a white void of swirling snow. Adam stoked the fire to blazing, brought in extra firewood, and insisted on checking the livestock before the storm grew any worse. "You'll freeze out there," Katherine protested, watching through the window as the snow fell in blinding sheets. "I need to make sure the animals are secure in the barn," Adam replied, already pulling on his heavy coat. "I won't be long." Katherine waited anxiously, keeping the fire well fed and heating water for coffee. When Adam finally returned, he was covered in snow, his face red from the biting cold. "The animals are fine," he reported, stamping snow from his boots. "But the drifts are already waist-high in places. I don't think we'll be going anywhere for a few days." "Days?" Katherine echoed, helping him remove his frozen coat. Adam nodded grimly. "It's a bad one. Might be the worst I've seen since coming to Nevada." That night, the temperature plummeted further. The wind found every crack in the cabin walls, creating drafts that made the candles flicker. Despite the roaring fire, the cabin grew increasingly cold. Katherine added another blanket to her bed, but still shivered beneath the covers. Near midnight, a particularly violent gust rattled the cabin, and Katherine heard a sharp crack from above. Moments later, a section of the roof gave way under the weight of accumulated snow, sending a cascade of powdery white into the cabin. Katherine scrambled from her bed with a cry of alarm. Adam was there almost instantly, having run from the barn at the sound. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, rushing to her side. "No, just startled," Katherine assured him, clutching her blanket around her nightgown. "But the roof. I see it." Adam examined the damage, his expression grim. "We can't stay here. The weight of the snow could bring down more of the roof at any time. Where can we go? We can't possibly reach town in this storm." "The main cabin," Adam decided. "The roof is newer, stronger. Grab what you need quickly." Katherine hastily gathered her clothes and her father's journal, while Adam collected her other possessions. Together they fought their way through the blinding snow to the main cabin, a journey of only 100 yards that felt like miles in the freezing darkness. The main cabin was indeed warmer, its newer construction better able to withstand the storm's fury. Adam built up the fire, while Katherine changed out of her snow-dampened nightgown behind the privacy of a blanket strung across a corner. "You take the bed," Adam insisted. "I'll sleep by the fire." Katherine eyed the narrow bed in the cabin's single bedroom, then looked at Adam's tall frame. "You'll be cramped and uncomfortable on the floor. I've slept in worse places," he assured her. "Don't be ridiculous," Katherine said firmly, surprising herself with her boldness. "The bed is big enough for both of us if we're careful. We're both adults, and these are extraordinary circumstances." Adam looked shocked, then uncertain. "Katherine, your reputation, who's to know but us? And I trust you completely." She blushed but held his gaze. "I'm being practical, Adam. Neither of us should have to freeze when there's a perfectly good bed available." After a moment's hesitation, Adam nodded. "All right, but I'll stay on top of the covers." They settled into an awkward arrangement, Katherine beneath the quilts, Adam atop them with his coat for warmth, a respectful distance maintained between them. Despite the propriety of their positions, Katherine found her heart racing at Adam's proximity. "Katherine," Adam said softly into the darkness, "remember when I said I'd propose once we'd had time to be certain of our feelings?" "Yes," she whispered. "I'm certain now." He turned on his side to face her, his features just visible in the firelight. "When I saw the roof collapse, all I could think was that I might lose you, that I might never get the chance to tell you how much I love you." Katherine's breath caught. "You love me?" "With all my heart. These past months have been the happiest of my life, simply because you were in it." He reached across the space between them to touch her cheek gently. "I know this isn't the romantic proposal you deserve." "It's perfect," Katherine interrupted, covering his hand with her own. "And yes, Adam Thornton, I will marry you. I love you too." Their kiss was sweet and full of promise. sealing the commitment they had just made to each other. When they parted, Adam smiled and said, "When the storm passes, we'll go into town, make it official, and we'll need to decide where to live, your land or mine." "Both," Katherine suggested. "We'll combine them, build something new together." The blizzard lasted 3 days, during which Adam and Katherine remained safely in the main cabin, planning their future together. When the storm finally broke, revealing a transformed landscape of pristine white, they rode into Pioche to share their news. They were married 2 weeks later in the Fremont church, which the townspeople helped clean and repair for the occasion. Sheriff Monroe gave Katherine away, and Mrs. Henderson wept openly during the ceremony. Even Tommy Wilson attended, bringing news that Jeremiah Caldwell had left town under mysterious circumstances, reportedly after receiving a visit from federal marshals investigating mining fraud. Spring brought new beginnings. Katherine and Adam built a larger house where their properties met, incorporating timbers from both the old cabin and Katherine's father's mining office. They planted an orchard and expanded the cattle herd, combining Adam's ranching knowledge with Katherine's shrewd business sense. On warm evenings, they often sat on their new porch, watching the sunset paint the Nevada sky. On one such evening, a year after their wedding, as Katherine rested her head on her husband's shoulder, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly where their first child grew, she reflected on the strange path that had led her here. "I never thought I'd be grateful to Hester," she mused, "but if she hadn't burned my belongings and sent me west, I might never have found you." Adam placed his hand over hers on her stomach. "Sometimes the worst beginnings lead to the best endings." "This isn't an ending," Katherine corrected, smiling up at him. "It's just the beginning." And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Katherine O'Brien. Thornton knew she had found not just a home, but a future brighter than she had ever dared to imagine, all because a grieving woman with nothing left had found kindness in the heart of a cowboy who gave her shelter, and, ultimately, his heart. The years that followed brought prosperity and joy to the Thornton ranch. Their first child, a son they named James after Katherine's father, was born healthy and strong the following winter. 2 years later, a daughter, Sarah, joined the family, named for the grandmother she would never meet, but whose spirit seemed to live on in her curious eyes and determined nature. Katherine continued to teach at the Pioche school until James was born, then devoted herself to raising their children and helping Adam manage their expanding ranch. She never regretted leaving Boston behind, finding in Nevada a freedom and purpose she had never known in the East. The money from her father's mining claim was invested wisely, allowing them to purchase additional land and cattle. By 1885, the Thornton Ranch was one of the most successful in Lincoln County, respected not just for its fine cattle, but for the fair treatment of its workers. Sometimes, on the anniversary of her father's death, Katherine would ride to the Fremont Church Cemetery and place flowers on the memorial stone. She would tell her mother about her children, her life with Adam, the happiness she had found in this wild, beautiful country. And she would thank her father for his final gift, not just the money that had given her a start, but the journey that had led her to where she truly belonged. "I think they would have liked each other," Adam commented once, after accompanying Katherine on her annual visit. "Father and you?" Katherine smiled at the thought. "Yes, I believe they would have. You're similar in many ways, honorable, kind, determined." "I wish I'd known him better," Adam said, placing his arm around her shoulders as they walked back to their horses. "But I feel I know him through you, through the stories you've shared, through the journal you still read to the children." That night, as they lay together in the bedroom of the home they had built with their own hands, Katherine reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought her to this moment. From the ashes of her old life, destroyed by a bitter woman's cruelty, had risen something far more precious than anything she had left behind. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked Adam softly. "Taking in a stranger that night, giving up your cabin to sleep in the barn?" Adam pulled her closer, his voice warm against her hair. "Never. Not for a single moment. It was the best decision I ever made. Even better than expanding the North Pasture," Katherine teased, referring to a recent acquisition Adam was particularly proud of. "Even better than that," he laughed. Though it was a close call. As moonlight spilled through the window, painting silver patterns on the floor of the home they had created together, Katherine O'Brien Thornton closed her eyes in contentment. From Boston socialite's unwanted stepdaughter to Nevada rancher's beloved wife, mother, and partner, it was a journey she could never have imagined. But it was a journey that had led her home, in every sense of the word. And when dawn broke over the Nevada hills, bringing another day of the life they had built together, Katherine knew with absolute certainty that this love, this family, this place was exactly where she was meant to be.